transplant. The crushed gravel footpath wound uphill from the parking lot through a grove of poplar trees. From the passenger seat of the van, Howard spotted the monument at the top of the hill, a head-high granite pylon that marked the site of a Puritan massacre of a band of Narragansett Indians. He made out the slender figure of a woman standing next to the pylon. She wore jeans and a bright yellow nylon poncho with the hood up. He turned to the woman in the driver's seat and said, "I don't know, Betty. It's farther than I usually walk, you know." "Can't turn back now," she said. She reached across him and opened his door and handed his cane to him. "It's not so far. She's waiting for you. Maybe you could go up and bring her down here instead. Maybe you could pretend she doesn't exist and go sit on the porch at the house like an invalid and watch the sunset over the harbor. You need the exercise, Howard. Besides, you set this up. This is your deal." "No, it's Dr. Horowitz's deal," he said. He grabbed his cane and eased himself from the van. The whole thing is crazy, he thought. I am an invalid. I need to be left alone. This woman shouldn't bring her troubles to me. I've got enough of my own. He stood unsteadily for a few seconds, then squared his shoulders and slowly made his way up the path toward the woman in the yellow poncho. This was not how he expected the day to play out. Around 10 that morning, Betty had entered his bedroom without knocking as usual and had drawn back the curtains and let the sunlight flood the room. From his bed, Howard saw the sloping meadow below and then the harbor and the long, low peninsula on the far side, the white steeple of the church and the colonial-era waterside houses and docks of the fishing village there, and his irritation, as usual, passed. "Let's check the vitals," Nurse Betty said. "See if you're ready for a walk in the park today. Doctor's orders." She pushed up his pajama sleeve and began taking his blood pressure. She was an abrupt, pink, square-faced woman with graying, straw-colored hair, cut in a page poi with Prince Valiant bangs. Her hair looked ridiculous to Howard. She was in her mid-40s, a few years younger than he. After some initial difficulty, they had become friends. Her short, athletic body was attractive, but in a masculine way, and was not sexy to him, and he was glad of that.
Well, Portland, meth, tattoos, death.
These are my people.
That was a cheery one. I thought it was really brave that you read 2 stories you've never read before to a big audience.
Yeah, well, I don't think it was that. No.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do.
Not really. I mean, it was, there's a public reading puts a kind of edge on you. I mean, actors will tell you, you're not going to do a good job unless you feel a little nervous and scared. And I think this is true for reading in public. If you come out to read something you have read many times and you're comfortable with and you know the good parts and you skip over the bad parts and so on, and you know how to anticipate the audience reaction, you don't necessarily read very well. I went through a year and a half of public readings from a novel, the last novel that I published. I did the requisite book tour in the United States for 6 weeks and then went on to Canada and then Europe and so on. And by the end of it, I could really, deliver a polished reading, but I hated my book, and and I don't think I was reading very effectively because I didn't have that edge. I wasn't scared. I wasn't anxious. Whereas tonight, I was a little anxious and scared. So I'm glad that you enjoyed the story such as you expressed, anyhow.
One of the things I wanted to start with was to really go to the beginning of writing, inspiration specific to the story to. The second story. Mm-hmm. How much of that was based on any experience you had in an airport or elsewhere?
Yeah, it's one of the. something I brought home from the book tour. In fact, yeah, sitting in Portland in the airport trying to catch the plane to Minneapolis where I had to go on. And in fact, a woman did start talking to me about going down to the morgue and checking for a woman she once knew, because she could identify her by her tattoos and her piercings. And every time a body, and that time they were finding a lot of bodies along the Willamette River of young women. And I just said, whoa, this is so bizarre and intense. And I just made some notes on it. And this, actually, to tell you the honest truth, that happened maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and it was in my notebook. And this year, when I started to write stories again, I was going through my notebooks, and I saw that scene that had happened to me in an airport in Portland. And I just said, gee, I want to try to find out what that really was about, what was going on with that woman in that airport that night, that she told me a story that was utterly, in a sense, inappropriate for the little occasion that under which we met.
Well, but you've said before that all of your stories and books really start with curiosity and seeing something or hearing something, reading a story in the paper that gets your mind going and you become curious about it. And there's so many different things to be curious about. How do you really zero in, decide that this is that's something that's worth pursuing, particularly for a novel, which is such a marathon?
Well, I think Flannery Connor said, you write in order to penetrate a mystery, something which is mysterious to you. And if you are successful, you do penetrate that mystery to a further mystery beyond.